My name is Jerry Nappi. I'm a salesperson for a company called Thomson Reuters, and my recollection of 9/11 is based on my experiences out of town that day, based on a flight that I took to the West Coast. The flight got in the air at about 8:30 a.m. Another thing that I remember is as we were taking off, it was either one of the flight attendants, somebody on the crew had mentioned that, you know, if you were to look out the right side of the window, what a beautiful shot of Manhattan you would get. As we did the climb out, you know, all of a sudden the flight attendants started going through the cabin, collecting everything. You know, felt the flight descend a little bit, felt it turn, and a few minutes later the pilot came on, and basically announced that we were being required to land. That a state of emergency had in fact been declared, and that there had been an attack on the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. We ended up landing in Grand Rapids, Michigan. When we did touchdown, I remember looking out the window and seeing a bunch of planes on the runway, more than you would expect in an airport the size of Grand Rapids. Everybody on the plane was trying to get through, you know, on their cell phones to different people. The airphone wasn't working. I started hearing, you know, people talking on the plane that they had gotten through, and that you know, one of the towers had collapsed at this point. And you know, I was struck by it. You know, our offices are right across the street. I worked at 195 Broadway, and I couldn't imagine the towers being gone. I was basically the first one online, rented a car, and you know, started to get some things together. And there turned out that there was another person that was going back to New York as well that asked if he could hitch along with me, and him and I drove back 10 hours back to the New York City area. I was unable to get over the bridge back into Staten Island even around midnight that night because all the bridges were closed. So I spent the night at my mother's house, and then I made it back to Staten Island the next day. I mean, the folks that were in our offices told me that when the first plane hit, it almost appeared to them as if there was a ticker tape parade going on. They basically looked out our windows, heard the explosion, and saw these pieces of paper and stuff floating down. But when they went outside to see what had actually happened, and they went out the side door, and they were standing there on Church Street looking up, unfortunately they saw, you know, people falling from the buildings. They saw, you know, people injured. And those sort of things stuck around with a lot of those guys. You know, the hijackers could have very easily have plotted to take over my plane, which had basically the same criteria as the United flight that left. You know, transcontinental flight, not a lot of people on it. Leaving from Newark, going to San Francisco, where I could have just as easily chose to fly on United as opposed to Continental, in which case I would have been on Flight 93. So when I think back about that, you know, it grieves me for the folks that we lost, and then I look at it from my perspective and think of how lucky I am that I'm still here today, as a result of, you know, my choice to fly with Continental, basically.